Hi, this is Anna, and this is Check It at the Round Table, where we discuss movies, books, music, and stuff. Today, we are discussing Thailand and Anna's impressions of it after almost 2 years of living there on and off again. So, back in early 2023, I went to Thailand and I studied Thai for a year in Krabi, Thailand. And then, no, not quite a year. I was 9 months in Krabi, Thailand, and then I moved to near Bangkok for the remaining 3 months because of my health. And then I just went back to Thailand here this winter for another 3 month stay. So when I left the States at the end of 2022, my goal was to live in Thailand. I was like, I will go to Thailand. I will learn to speak and read and write Thai. I will spend the rest of my days probably in Thailand because the people will be nice, the locations will be beautiful, it will be amazing. Now, my time in Thailand, I have to say, I have met some incredible people there. Very nice culture. I have nothing against anything related to that. However, I will say after living there for almost 2 years of my life, I do not want to live there permanently. Now, I do plan on going back for visits throughout my life because I like going to Bangkok or visiting Chiang Mai or, things like that. But for a permanent location, it is fraught with difficulty for Anna. So I am normally in pretty good health. Now, the pandemic did change some things because Anna got COVID 3 times during the pandemic. And because of that, I now have adult onset asthma, which I have to monitor and mitigate with inhalers and medication sometimes. But usually, my asthma is not even there. Like when I left the States, they told me I didn't really even have asthma, but it has flared up since visiting Thailand, for example. But when I was in Thailand the first time, I kept getting these really weird low grade temperature, kind of flu like symptoms. I go to the doctor, they would give me antibiotics. That happened like 3 times in the first 9 months I was there. And when I added up how much time I lost because I had to not work or not do school, it was about a month out of those 9 months that I just really wasn't able to function as I normally can. Now, the other thing that I noticed is this was in Krabi, Thailand, which is near the Malaysian border. There, it gets freaking hot, peeps. I mean, like 40, 42 degrees Celsius sometimes. And I did have air conditioning, but it is not the best for temperature. And what I also noticed was even my Thai friends were getting sick. Like, and my Thai instructor at the school, he got so sick he was almost hospitalized. And these are people who have been there their whole lives with the same symptoms I was having. So it's not because I was a foreigner and unused to the climate that I was having these issues. Now, when I talked to the doctors about it, they said that the issue is the human body does not necessarily do idyllically well in a climate that gets to 40 to 42 degrees Celsius and then has torrential rains, which we also had there. So it creates this kind of mecca for bacterial growth and issues relating to weird infections. So, like when this happened, I would go to the clinic and they would be like, "You have a blood infection." Well, when I think of blood infection in English, I think of sepsis. Sepsis is a blood infection. However, if it really was a sepsis case, oral antibiotics would not have worked. Because I was talking to one of my friends who is a hematologist in Japan, and he's like, it's not a blood infection because if it really was affecting your blood, now of course it did affect my white blood cell count, I will admit that, but it did not infect my blood in the same way that a sepsis case would have. However, after being sick for literally a month of my 9 months there, I decided about 7 months into studying Thai there that I would continue to study Thai because the lessons were also offered online, but that I would go and move closer to Bangkok to be near better medical facilities. And also, I was having some physical therapy issues because I had hurt my back in the midst of all that too. So I was like, I did stay there for 9 months of the 12, but then I moved closer to Bangkok because I'm like, Krabi to Bangkok is literally like a very long way by bus. Now you can take a plane too, but that's a little expensive. In honest opinion, as a college student, I'm like, the budget, the budget. So I did decide to move closer to Bangkok. When I moved closer to Bangkok, what I found was my symptoms dramatically reduced. Because if you do move closer to Bangkok, yes, you do have to deal with air quality issues near Bangkok, of course, that is a problem. But it is not nearly as humid and even as hot as it gets in the Malaysian Thai border. It's just not as bad. Now, it is still freaking hot in summer. Like in July, when I left Thailand that year, it was it was freaking hot. So I do have to say, Thailand can get very hot temperatures, but it was much better in health quality and quality of life being closer to Bangkok, so I could go to the doctor if needed, to just have access to better medical facilities in general. So that was an improvement. However, I still had trouble getting sick with either the not the low grade fevers really anymore. That let up once I left Krabi. But the other thing that's a bit problematic in Thailand is the water quality. Now, the water quality is a bit strange in Thailand because Thailand's earth constitution, I don't know how you want to say this, their land, when they pull the water up, the mud is very, very different compared to other countries. So, like, when I was in Thailand this last time for the winter, I was living in a very nice condo. But I had to change out my sink and shower filters like every 2 weeks because, and like I didn't even do my laundry at the condo because in one day the filter had gotten black with mud particulates. I mean, one day of using the filter on the washer. So I went to a special laundromat that had a huge filter system so that I knew that the water would be very, very pristine to wash my clothes in. But it's not that the water, I mean, of course, the water is a contaminated problem because they do not have good waste facilities in Thailand either. So a lot of the big resorts will literally just dump the sewage into the ocean near the shore. So, like when I was in Krabi, they would literally have a resort that would dump the sewage out, and people were swimming in the water next to it. And they were sitting there going, I really don't know why they do this. Now, it was not the locals that were swimming in the water, it was the tourists. And I'm like, do they not see the sewage being dumped from the resort into the water that they are, swimming and surfing in? I don't know. Now, if you go out from the mainland to like the islands, the water is very clean, very pristine, etc. You don't have to worry about that. But if you are swimming on the coast or wading on the beach on the coast in Thailand, it is nothing like the pictures that I saw when I lived in the States before I left to go to Thailand because it does not look clean and beautiful for the water and it smells, well, sewage like. So that was a big surprise to me when I was in Thailand because I was like, I really thought the water would be very beautiful and very clean when you were by the ocean, but it tends to smell somewhat pungent sometimes, and it is not clear blue water unless you go out on a boat from the mainland to the islands that surround Thailand. Then you're looking at clean water. But the filter situation makes it so that you have to drink bottled water. Some people do brush their teeth with the water from the sink. I personally would not do that myself. Now, I think one time I did that by accident, but then I remembered you're not in the States anymore, Toto, so don't do that. But that is another concern because like I've been to other countries like Taiwan where you also should not drink the water out of the tap, but it is for a completely different reason. So in Taiwan, when they do not drink the water from the tap, it tends to be because the water comes from a tank at the top of the building, and there is sediment that is in that tank just naturally occurring, but it is not because there is like bacteria or soil debris in the water. So like if I travel to Taiwan, I do boil the water that I get from the tap, and I do use like a cotton filter in the sink to like get rid of the sediment. But if I did decide to drink the water from the tap, it's not like going to make me sick. It's just not going to taste particularly good. But if I drink the water from the tap in Thailand, it can make you freaking sick. So that is another thing that long term people do need to think about when they consider living in Thailand. Now, again, this is not to say Thailand is not ideal for some people. It is just to say that for Anna and my preferences, Thailand did not prove idyllic in that regard as well with the water situation. Now, I do understand that some condos do filter the water. However, it has been my experience that even when the condos say they filter the water is not filtered to a level that makes it free from like brown gunk that comes through the faucet. So this is, kind of weird. But anyway, now the medical side of Thailand. So I have visited Malaysia, Taiwan, Singapore, Vietnam. I'm trying to think. I think I've been a couple other places, but I cannot remember them at the moment because it's later at night. So a lot of people in the States and also in expat magazines will talk about people going to Thailand for medical reasons because the medical is very high quality and because it is very cost effective. Now, the medical is good in Thailand. Like if you get sick, you can go and get antibiotics, you can talk to the doctor, you can take care of it. However, I will say that in my travels, the places that I have liked the best for medical is hands down Taiwan is the best medical experience I have ever had. Now, granted, I do not get like severely sick, but if I am sick, it is the easiest to navigate. The quality is very, very good, like exceptional quality of care. Like, for example, when I was in Thailand after having the three somewhat serious blood infections, which really weren't blood infections, I decided to get some blood work done near Bangkok. I was like, I just want to make sure that there's no serious underlying issue, which is why I keep getting sick, other than the fact that it's too hot and humid and my body doesn't like that. So I went in to get a round of, just normal blood tests. It literally took me over an hour of going and talking with the staff in Thai and English because I can speak some Thai, not apparently very fluent, but they were all sitting there going, "This girl actually speaks some Thai." I'm like, "Yes, I can speak some Thai, but I have to use some English too." But it took over an hour to try to get the correct blood tests ordered to be done. Now, the blood test procedure, that took like 10 minutes max. I mean, that was super easy. But the process of trying to make sure that they actually got the right blood tests ordered, even though I can speak some Thai, took me over an hour. And I was like, egad. Now, this is because the language barrier in Thailand is very, very significant. Even like in the health industry, even with the people who work in clinics who kind of cater to expats, it is a very difficult thing. Now, if you're talking with the doctors in Thailand, it is a little better because usually the doctors have some greater level of fluency in English than like the nursing staff. However, I've noticed it is not particularly easy. Now, conversely, when I come to Taiwan and I have a medical issue, I go into the clinic. I am in the doctor's office in 20 minutes or less, even if I do not have insurance, even if I do not have previous history at that clinic. The doctor speaks very fluent English. I do not have to use a translator. Now, I still translate my my issues that I'm having into Chinese because I think it's better just to make sure that it's clear. But I have never had to rely on my translator to explain things to a physician in Taiwan. Also, if I am sick in Taiwan, I can pick up my medication directly at the doctor's office. I do not have to go to another pharmacy or clinic to do so. If I do the medication at the clinics in Thailand, it's usually a lot more expensive. Not always, but they do have like a price thing. So I have to usually go to the pharmacy instead to get the medicine at like half price. I have noticed, at least when you're dealing with more westernized clinics, which is another stop when you don't feel good. Now, the price of the medical is not terribly expensive in either Thailand or Taiwan, as I'm using in this example, but the quality of being able to just go in, talk to someone, say, I am sick, this is what's wrong, have them understand you, order the right tests, and know that it's not going to be confused or perhaps the, the language barrier is too great is much, much easier in Taiwan compared to Thailand. Now, I cannot speak for Japan as I have not been there yet. I'm hoping to go later this year, but I have not made it to Japan yet. But I have heard from others who have been in Japan that it is similar to Taiwan in its seamlessness, and same with South Korea. But that's another reason why, like long term, I probably wouldn't want to live in Thailand because even though I hope that like I wouldn't get sick again, which another story, this time I got very, very sick when I went back to Thailand for 3 months, but that's for the end of this episode and also for another episode of a separate thing just on that discussion because that was very weird and kind of interesting and might be useful for someone else. I don't know. But anyway, so if if I have kids, which I do plan to have kids, I'm like, I don't want to have to navigate the medical system in Thailand with a sick kid, especially like if I am on my own or, I don't mean it weird, but I'm like, if my spouse wouldn't be Thai, I'm like, and I don't mean it bad, but I'm like, I don't want to rely on my spouse, even if they were Thai, to try to explain this to the clinic because I think that's one thing that I found very troubling in Thailand is a lot of times with the expats that do end up with their significant other being Thai is they often sometimes can be very demanding of that spouse because they want them to explain to be the interpreter. Like when I go to the visa office, I often see um, couples where one partner is Thai, one partner is an expat, and the expat partner is basically demanding that the Thai partner explain the system in Thai to the visa agency. And I'm like, you know, I'm not really saying that for them it does not work because obviously it does. But if I am going to be in a country, I don't want to have to rely on my partner to explain basic medical situation to to the medical staff because that's not my partner's job. My partner's job is for me to be there for them and for them to be there for me, but that's not like they should have a set role of chief interpreter. So that's another reason why Anna would not particularly want to live in Thailand long term. Now, this last year, I decided after spending some time in other Asian countries, I went to Taiwan for a while, I went to Malaysia for a while, I stopped in Singapore. I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to go back to Thailand for 1 to 3 months, take care of some business things that I had there, take care of some personal things that I had there, and I was like, just take care of that and then be done. Well, some of my friends who are Thai and expat found me a beautiful condo, and I was able to stay there for 3 months. And I was like, it's just nice to be in one place for a while, to not have to worry about things. I'll stay here for 3 months. Well, the first month went great. There was no trouble. The condo was perfect. I was able to get through a bunch of finals because I had my school exams, which were very intense this last semester. I was like, my God, that was a big semester. So I'm like this semester I'm in 4 classes. Last semester I was in 3, but the last 3 classes that semester were way harder than the classes I'm doing right now. So I'm like, I had to just kind of buckle down at the condo and do my classes and then work online. And so at the end of the day, the first month went pretty perfect. I didn't get food poisoning, everything was smooth. But the second and third month, I started to develop breathing issues. Now, I again have not had asthma for like literally 2.5 years since I left the States. I was like, I got a clean bill of health when I left the States. I haven't had to use my inhaler except like when I went on a hike, which involved like climbing a lot of stairs or climbing a mountain. I was like, then I did use the inhaler just as a precautionary measure. But I got something called nocturnal asthma attacks. So I woke up in the middle of the night and I could not figure out why my body was in shock. Because it was one of those things where it's like, I really don't get stressed about health, even if things are going terribly crazy. Because I've had some things with family members when things went terribly crazy with their health. And I was like, I could stay calm, I could manage it. I'm like, we will get through this, we will deal with it. But I'm sitting there in the middle of the night and I wake up and my body is literally in in a state of shock. I can tell because I'm like, it's my legs, my arms, everything's jerking. I'm like, this is a state of shock. And my brain is sitting there going, okay, Anna, your body is not behaving. Something is wrong. And then I realized, I'm like, I can't freaking breathe. And I'm like, this is not good because you have to breathe in order to, live. So I was sitting there going, I'm going to be fine. I finally got my body to quit moving around without my without my I was like, this body has got to behave itself. So it's like after a few minutes, the body quit spasming. I was able to breathe. After like a minute, I was like, I can breathe, I can breathe. But I had to go get my inhaler, my special steroid inhaler. I had to take a bunch of medicine. I went to the doctor because apparently I got a bronchial infection, which was triggered by the asthma attack. And then I kept having those nocturnal asthma attacks. Like I wake up and I literally couldn't breathe. And these can be very dangerous because if you are a younger person, and as I am a very heavy sleeper, these can be life threatening. So, like the doctor were telling me, they were like, you're pretty healthy, but these could kill you. And I was like, that's not something you want to hear when you're in your early 30s. I'm like, I have a lot more that I want to do and live and be and people I want to be there for. I'm like, I don't want to die of a stupid nocturnal asthma attack. I mean, if I'm going to go, I want to go in my sleep, but not that way. And, not for a very long time. It's not in the 130-year plan. I'm like, when we reach 130 years, we can talk about dying in our sleep. But until then, it's not in the plan. It's not in the. And so I'm sitting there going, geez Louise. So I got a bunch more inhaler medication. I got some special herbal medication, not cannabis medication, but like herbal plants that are supposed to help with the lung congestion because I'm allergic to cannabis. It's nothing against cannabis, but just does not agree with my body. So I took the medicine and I did get improvements, but I was still fighting the breathing issues, but only really at night. And this is with 4 air purifiers going in my condo all day long. Now the other component though is both my neighbors at the condo smoked a lot of marijuana, like a lot. I could not hang my clothes outside on the balcony, even though I did have a drying rack there for them, because if I did, I would smell like a walking weed, which I really don't want to smell like. So I would hang my clothes indoors on the drying rack, and I would keep my air purifiers on because I'm like, that can't be good for asthma. So for the last 2 months, I fought that, and then like a week of the bronchial infection, which was connected to that. And then the last week I was in Thailand, I got food poisoning. I was like, I made it all the way through to the end of my time there, and then I got bloody food poisoning again. So, needless to say, I did have a great first month in Thailand, and I did really enjoy my time in Bangkok because I spent like about a week in Bangkok at the beginning and end of my trip. I got to go to the GMMTV building, which I will drop the vlogs of that in the podcast here later. And I also got to go to the Sea Life Bangkok where they filmed Amwa and Itse. I was like, touch the hallowed halls of GMMTV and of Amwa, scene location. So that was good. But I'm like, the whole asthma thing and becoming, in greater touch with your mortality in your early 30s. I'm like, that was not fun at all. So, anyway, I left Thailand and I went to another place in Asia, and I'm like, I was there a week and I was going, I haven't had one freaking asthma attack. I mean, not even one. I haven't woken up once in the night, and that's the other thing, because with the nocturnal asthma attacks, it had gotten to the point where I really couldn't sleep at night because I was so worried that I wouldn't be able to wake up if I couldn't breathe, which I know is kind of stupid because if you can't sleep, then you're going to get sicker, and it's a problem. It's like a vicious cycle. But I'm like, I really didn't want to sleep and then not be able to breathe. I'm like, it's one of those things. But when I went to the next place I was at, I was like, I don't have any asthma attacks. And what was funny is when I landed there, I was like, it's raining. There are people smoking everywhere on the streets. There are people smoking cigarettes, in the apartment complex. I'm like, but I'm still not having any freaking asthma attacks. And then I sat there and was like, you know, I wonder if it had to do with the fact that it was marijuana smoke in Thailand. Because most people in Thailand who smoke are not the locals, oddly enough, but only really the expats. And they don't smoke cigarettes. They only smoke the marijuana cigarettes, which are like special made cigarettes. I don't know how to explain that, but like they're longer and white compared to the regular shorter cigarettes that are not cannabis. I'm not an aficionado on either type of cigarette. I just know they look a little different. But anyway, I got to Googling it because I was going, I wonder if there is a reason that the marijuana smoke would have affected me more as someone with asthma than cigarette smoke, which doesn't seem to trigger asthma at all for me. Like, I can be in a room with someone smoking a regular, menthol cigarette or, you know, regular tobacco cigarette of some sort, and it's not really going to make me cough or have a dry throat or anything. I mean, I know secondhand smoke is bad, totally get that, but I'm like, it's not going to set off the blooming nocturnal asthma attacks, apparently. Well, I got to looking it up on the interwebs, and I was like, this is fascinating because apparently marijuana, cannabis cigarettes, have 2 to 5 times the amount of particulates released in tar and chemicals and just general dusty compared to regular cigarettes. So, like, when my neighbors were out smoking, you know, some kind of cigarette, they would be releasing literally 2 to 5 times the amount of particulates, which is probably why I was getting so darn sick. I was like, and also this is explaining, like, when I do have an asthma attack, it's really only around the marijuana smoke, or if I am by a campfire, which a campfire releases a lot of particulates as well. So I'm like, that makes sense, but that explains why I've been so sick. And then why I moved to a new place. It's like I am completely cured. I haven't had to take my inhaler. Now, I still have been taking my inhaler because I'm like, you know, I don't want to jinx things. Even though I haven't had an attack, it's just good, good health maintenance for this period of my life since I was told, this could kill you. I'm like, it's good health maintenance to have the inhaler every day to make sure that this doesn't, kill me before I'm 130. So anyway, but I'm like, that explains it. So in the end, what I've learned from my time in Thailand about the negatives is the the water quality is a problem. The temperature with the wet of the humidity is also a problem. And the marijuana smoke is a big problem for Anna. Now, to clarify for those listening, I personally have no moral or ethical problems with marijuana as a substance, but I do have a problem with it as a person with asthma who that triggers nocturnal asthma attacks. Because I'm like, that is a very dangerous thing for Anna. And I think it's also a very dangerous thing for some other people that have asthma and happen to have that allergen. So I think that sometimes certain things are kind of a wake up call. And for me, it's like with those three things in combination, it's just shown me that over the last almost 2 years of living in Thailand on again, off again, that it's not the best place for Anna at this point in time. Now, I'm not saying that it will forever be, but I think for long term, most likely, it will forever be. Now, the other two things, which are somewhat minor issues, but still I'm going to talk about them as negatives. And then I will do a podcast on all the positives of Thailand because there are very many positives which I did not cover in this podcast. But I'm like, this podcast is getting long, so we're going to shorten it after this. But the other negative about Thailand is the rain. So the rain in Thailand and also Malaysia is very different than the rain in other countries in the world. The reason for this is bacteria. I don't know a nice way to say that, so I'm just going to say bacteria. So, for example, when I did get sick with the quote quote blood infections, which were not blood infections, one of the doctors who had lived in Thailand his whole life, like native Thai, he's like, Miss Anna, the problem is also the rain here. If you get that on your skin, it can make you have this symptom, which will give you the fevers because there's bacteria in the rain. And I was like, rainwater is supposed to be clear, coming from the sky. But the problem is, the rainwater is coming from the ocean, which has sewage dumped in it, and then it gets dropped back onto the earth. So, shortly after having that talk with the doctor, one day I was out on my motorbike, and even though I was trying to get home before the rain, I got stuck in a torrential downpour. Now, I am not talking about a little bit of rain. Like when it rains in Thailand and it is a torrential downpour, it is like the heavens open and a shower is turned on full blast for sometimes up to 40 minutes to an hour at a time. So I finally got home to my house I was living at the time, and I took off my clothes because I was literally sopping wet, and I washed my t-shirt in the washer. My t-shirt, even though I had not gotten in mud, I was just on my motorbike in the rain. There is no mud on the streets or anything, it's all blacktop. My t-shirt was literally brown water when it went in the washer. I was like, oh my God. So I washed it. I drained the water. I washed it literally 6 times, and it finally had clear water because it was so full of the brown ick from the rain. And in Malaysia, it is similar because I was watching a video on living in Malaysia, and one person was asking, why is it people don't go out in the rain like they do in Japan when it rains when they're in Malaysia? And the reason is it's because the rain has chemicals that if they touch your skin and bacteria that if it touches your skin, it's gonna make you not feel good. So that's another component to living in Thailand that I really was not prepared for. That I realized like the when I left Thailand last summer, because I left in July for a while, and I was like, I know it happened in I think June before I left, and I was going, oh my God. I mean, I don't normally swear, but when I washed the t-shirt 6 freaking times before the water ran clear and it was simply rainwater, I was like, this is a big problem. So now when I do go visit Thailand, I always make sure I have an umbrella, I make sure I have a very good raincoat, I make sure that if it is raining, I wait until it stops raining to go somewhere because I do not want to get even a drop of that rain on me if possible. So that is a component that I was not expecting. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the expat and Thai culture. Two separate discussions here. So, I was very surprised by the expat culture in Thailand. And it's kind of been the same experience I've had with the expat culture in most countries I have traveled to. So I usually have friends that I make that are locals in various countries. Because I'm learning the language, I often will meet with them. We become friends over common interests, things like that. And people think it's weird because they're going, "You don't have many expat friends." I'm going, "No, but I have a lot of Thai friends. I have a lot of friends who are Taiwanese. I have friends from other places." I'm like, I do have a lot of friends, but most of them are not expats like me. Now, in Thailand, the thing that I found is because I do have asthma and I don't smoke marijuana, and also because I don't drink because of another health condition, I really didn't fit in well with the expat group because most of the expats have activities that center around like going to a pub or a bar where they smoke marijuana or they drink a lot of alcohol. And although like I will go to a pub or a bar with friends in the States, I don't, they're usually non-smoking, and I don't have to worry about like having the marijuana smoke that's going to trigger an asthma attack. And nobody's going to think it weird that I don't drink, even though they are, because that's just kind of normal behavior in the States. However, in Thailand, it's kind of makes you a bit of an oddity, as it were, because I had people sitting there going, "Why are you here if you don't smoke or drink?" And I'm like, "I'm here because I want to learn the language, because I'm interested in the culture, because the people are very nice, because the cost of living is affordable." I mean, these are things that I think about when I go visit a place, but that's just me. So, because of that, I really didn't fit in well with the expat community in general. Now, I did make a few friends that were from South America that were expats, but they also did not really fit in well with the other expat community, and we were neighbors in Thailand, and it just really worked well that we could, be friends, come over to each other's house for dinner, sometimes go and do things together, that kind of thing. So, that is kind of my experience with the expat community in Thailand. Now, it could just be that in the part of Thailand I was in, that was the case. However, I don't really think that is the situation given some things that I've heard from other areas of Thailand. Now, I do think that there are parts of Thailand that are more friendly and open to people who might have varied interests that don't involve like smoking or drinking, but that is a little bit rare, I think, in that area. The other thing that I found was when I was in Thailand, there aren't a lot of like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, people thought, my Thai friends thought I was very strange because number one, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, and I also didn't have any tattoos because a lot of people come to Thailand to get tattoos. So when when the people who were Thai got to know me, they were like, "You're very different, Anna." And I'm going, "Well, it's nothing against tattoos either, except I have a very strong respect for needles and I really don't like them." So I'm like, plus I tend to have a bit of a changeable nature when it comes to design. I'm like, if I put a tattoo on my body and I don't like the design, it's very hard to get that off. Or if I have to have an MRI, it could bubble in the MRI machine, which sounds very, very painful. So I'm like, no, 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 no. So it's like, it's nothing really against tattoos, kind of like nothing against cannabis, but it's like, I worry about such things, and I know that I could change my mind about certain things, and it's much harder to do that after you have a tattoo. So it's like, that's that. But the thing that I found interesting was we're going to go to the Thai culture now. So with the Thai culture, what I found is when I went to Thailand, I was under the assumption that it would be similar to what I saw in BL dramas from Thailand. Now, to be clear, the reason that I went to Thailand was actually because I really liked Bad Buddy and Amwa, and I was like, I want to know if Thailand is at all like these these dramas in how the people interact with each other. Now, I think what I discovered in Thailand was it's kind of weird, and I'm not sure how to explain this, but I would say that BL dramas from Thailand. Now, I'm not talking about all BL dramas from Thailand. I'm not talking about Kim Porsche. I'm not talking about, I don't remember if the Playboy series was Thailand or Filipino. But I'm not talking about those kind of shows, and I'm not talking about um, oh, what's the other one? One of the first ones. It's flown out of my mind. Um, Anyway, I'm not talking about the ones with slightly toxic relationships. I'm not talking about those. But I'm talking about like Bad Buddy. I'm talking about Amwa. I'm talking about like Fame Po, which is recently married. I'm talking about Kidnap, which just aired. I would say, and like The Eclipse that aired a few years ago, or vice versa, the BL dramas like that really showcase the beautiful side of Thai culture. Now, I want to clarify it has nothing to do with sexual orientation or the LGBTQ plus movement. That's not the reason that I think it showcases the beauty of Thai culture. What I mean is the very kind nature of Thai people and the sweetness, and in a way, I don't know how to say it, but like in Western culture, people are so we become so jaded. Like when I think back to like living in the US, one thing I think about living in Asia is it's not that I think it's a naivety, that's not it at all. It's a it's a less jaded look at life, which is is more open and willing to try something, whereas in American culture people are just like we have to push through, we have to deal with this, we have to da, 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 da. And I'm like, in Thai culture in its beautiful form, the thing that I like about it is they are not like that. It's kind of the similar thing to what I like about Taiwanese culture or other cultures in Asia. It's like they're not going to like push their agenda if they don't think this is going to work, and they're not going to try to purposely do something to upset another person. And to me, that's one of the things I found very beautiful about Thai culture and also about my Thai friends because they are such kind people and they really do try to be very considerate, very polite, and very thoughtful toward other people. Now, the other part of Thailand that I think is a little difficult right now is there is a lot of unbalance in the wealth and economic structure of Thailand. Like there's people that have a lot and there's people that have very little. And there's people that are trying very, very hard to get to where they have more than just a little. And because of that, it can make some people a bit more um what's the word? More willing to do things that might not be the best things to do. Like if I am in a tourist area, they're going to probably try to charge me double or triple or maybe even more because they think they can get it. Now, what I have found is I tend to dress very plainly and I tell everyone that I am a college student, which is entirely true. And I also do not keep a lot of money in my wallet. So, like when I pay for something, I have maybe 20 bahts, 100 bahts in my wallet, and then I keep my 1,000 bahts in the pockets of my wallet where people cannot see them. Because if I don't, they're going to think that I will pay a lot more for things than I will. So, I have found that I have had very, very little trouble with ever being overcharged in Thailand. Because number one, I usually am very, very polite to people, which I've noticed that if you're a very polite expat and you're very nice and kind to people, you're not going to have them charge you like if you're a very, I don't know, it's like some people when they come to Thailand, they can be really freaking rude to the locals. And I'm like, then they will charge you a heck of a lot more. I've watched it. I'm like, if you're entitled and very rude, you're probably going to get charged 3 times as much as that actually costs. And the other thing is, because I've lived in Thailand for like 2 years, I'm like, I know the going rate for things. I know that there are certain places you don't go to buy things because I'm like, they're going to charge you more there. So it's like, I just kind of observe and go, this is where you do, this is what you don't do. But I haven't really had people try to to overcharge me too much. But I will say that the tourism industry in Thailand is a bit of a mixed bag of wool because what's happened is like in places like Pattaya, for example, or in certain areas that have like walking streets like Pattaya does, there are certain industries that have grown and popped up that are a little less nice than other industries. It's like when my one friend Mr. R went to Thailand this year. He went to Thailand and he said, "Oh, I'm going to go to Pattaya. It's a huge expat destination." And I'm going, "Mr. R, I don't know if you're going to like Pattaya. I've never been myself because I've been told that's not a place for honor." And he's like, "Ah, it'll be fine. It'll be wonderful. It'll be grand." Well, in the end, I get a call from Mr. R, and Mr. R's like, "Anna, Pattaya is scary." I'm going, "Mr. R, I tried to warn you that Pattaya probably wasn't your cup of tea." I'm like, "If it's not Anna's cup of tea, I know your cup of tea is a little different than mine, but it's not that big of a variable difference." He's like, "There are a lot of women in 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 swimsuit attire trying to pull me into buildings." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, there are a lot of women in swimsuit attire that try to pull people into buildings if you happen to be male, typically." I'm like, "You didn't know that about Pattaya?" I'm like, he's like, "There's a whole street of that here." And I'm going, "I am well aware that there is a whole street of that there, Mr. R." And he's like, "I am in my room, I am watching Netflix, and I'm getting food at the 7-Eleven downstairs until I can leave here." And I'm going, "This is why I tried to warn you about Pattaya." Because I'm like, and it's nothing against those industries in particular. I'm just saying it does tend to bring out that kind of industry. And the thing that I feel bad about the situation is how it does not do well for the locals. Like for the Thai women involved in those walking streets, it's not that necessarily their life is terrible, but it is certainly less idyllic than it should be. And they're also getting to see, unfortunately, sometimes the worst of foreigners' behavior. So I think that it's, in some cases, very sad that this is the situation in the economy in Thailand. Now, I will say, like, when I was a kid, I was told that there was, like, really terrible underage stuff going on in Thailand and that people shouldn't go there because it's everywhere. Well, I will say I have never seen that myself. Now, I'm sure that, like any place, there is some very inappropriate underage things that happen sometimes. We have that in the States too, unfortunately. It happens a lot more than it should. But the thing is that I've never seen that kind of thing happening in Thailand. Now, granted, I've never been to Pattaya, and I've never been to any of those places. I have had to go through Walking Street a few times, not because I wanted to be there, but one of the businesses that I had to go take care of business with happened to have an office that was in a walking street. So I was like, I had to walk by those businesses, and I was like, this is interesting. So I was like, yeah, it was a small walking street, so I'm going, that's a good thing, Fauna, because I'm like, I don't know if we're supposed to say hi as we go by the bars and the barmaids, or if we're just supposed to walk on by without saying anything, or just wave and say Swatika. I don't know. I'm like, I don't know what the etiquette is there, even though I've lived there for 2 years. So anyway, I was like, it's kind of interesting, but I think that that is the one thing, and it's not because like I have a huge issue with the walking street itself, but what I have an issue with is how people might be abused or might be seeing a bad side of humanity in certain situations in that kind of environment. So I think that's something that is a bit sad with Thailand is that there's such a marked difference between the very rich and the very poor sometimes. And like even in the situation where like I'm not a wealthy college student by any means, but my my life with my grants and with my online work I'm making a very comfortable living, and it's so much more than a lot of the people around me who are local had. Now, I didn't like go and say and flaunt that at all because I live very modestly. I wear very modest clothing. I don't buy a lot of stuff. So I'm like, you know, it's not that, but it just makes me feel a bit sad that it has to be so difficult for some people that live so close in proximity sometimes, because that imbalance, it doesn't have to be there. It could be easier for all parties. So I think that's one of the things that I found difficult, is because it does lead some people to try to become more, I don't know if we want to say westernized in their drive for success. Because I did meet a few people in Thailand who were Thai, and it was like they're very driven, they're very wanting to make money, they're very like make a buck, make a buck, make a buck. But I'm like, the reason they're that way is because they come from very difficult situations, and they don't realize that by acting like make a buck, make a buck, make a buck, it makes people who are somewhat observant realize we don't want to really be around this because they're just going to try to make bucks off of people. But I think that it's a difficult balance to have. The other weird thing about Thai culture that I was not expecting was Thailand just released their same-sex marriage legalization through the approval of the king, and it took 5 months to ratify. And now Kin and Porsche are married. I'm so happy for them. I was like, I watched their wedding video. It was awesome. I'm like, good for them. So I'm like, yes, they finally were able to get married in their own country. I'm like, why do we have to have this discussion? But anyway, so it's too long, too long. But anyway, so I'm just saying. But the thing that really surprised me about the LGBTQ plus was Thailand really promotes itself as an LGBTQ plus friendly country. However, I really didn't see that when I was in Thailand. Now, I will say they seem to be very open about the ladyboy culture in Thailand. They don't really treat ladyboys strange at all. Now, I did notice some people would like laugh at ladyboys that were Thai or things like that, which I found a little strange and inappropriate. But it's not more marked than I would see in the States for the same kind of behavior with people that were more traditional and less polite, maybe. I'm like, it's a weird combo there. But anyway, but the thing that I did notice is like with the same sex couples that were traveling in Thailand, and also the same sex couples that lived in Thailand, it is not that open of a society, which I think is kind of interesting given that they are Buddhist, which, from what I understand, Buddhism is very uh, non judgmental about LGBTQ, and also because they make a huge amount of money from LGBTQ plus travelers, and also the promotion through media of like their BL industry through Wabi Sabi Studios or GMMTV Studios, or I think there's even a couple other studios which I can't think of the name right now. But I'm like, they make a lot of money on their BL industry, mostly with overseas consumers, but still some in Thailand. But the country is not as open in those situations as I would have expected. Because, like, for example, my neighbors who I was friends with were from South America, and they were a same-sex couple. But I think one of the reasons that we all kind of got along is like I am not I guess I am LGBTQ because I'm very sexual and demisexual, but I found it interesting because I'm like, I was really the only expat that they apparently were able to hang out with, because most of the others seemed to be a little weird about that. And I was like, why does it matter? They're really cool people. So we would go and do things, and they also told me that like they went to Chiang Mai for a while, and they were like, there we had a couple of times where people said some really rude things or did some really rude things because we were a same-sex couple. I was like, this is so weird given Thailand's supposed openness. And also for like the same-sex couples that live in Thailand, I think it's a lot more difficult than the the media from Thailand would suggest. So I think it's kind of interesting personally, just as an observer, that it is that way, given how much money they make as a nation in 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 capital from the tourism industry and also from the media industry that is definitely LGBTQ plus I or LGBTQI plus friendly. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy in a way in my opinion. And that's another reason why I really didn't want to stay there long term is because I don't want to raise my kids in a place where people are not going to be treated fairly just because of the the gender of the person that they care about. I'm like, that's not a world I really want to have my kids grow up trying to think about. The other thing that totally unrelated to the LGBTQI plus, but I'm like the other thing that I got to thinking about with my kids is I'm like, if you live in Thailand and you do have children, it is going to lead to some somewhat difficult conversations you might have to have about the walking streets or about why certain things are the way they are with certain industries in Thailand that your children will just see walking in in the city. So I'm like, that's something that you really don't see like in Japan or in Taiwan or in South Korea. Now, of course, those places all have different red light districts. I'm not denying that, of course, but it's not to the market extent that you see in Thailand with that. And so I think that there's a lot of things that are changing and morphing in Thailand, and it will be interesting to see in the next few years, like how things morph, like with the promotion of the LGBTQ or the same-sex marriages in Thailand being legalized. Will that lead to have more equality in general for same-sex couples and for members of LGBTQI plus in general in Thailand? Will will things get easier in general for the economy as well? Will things be less stress and pressure? Will that affect how the walking streets are, how people are treated who are in those industries? So these are things that I think will be very interesting to see as things progress, as things morph and change, because it's very common in light of current world events and current things to get depressed, to think, oh, it's getting worse and worse and worse. But I don't know if it's because I tend to be an eternal optimist, which is kind of funny because some people would say I'm a pessimist when it comes to other things. But I'm like, I really don't think it's getting worse. I think that there are some bumps and wrinkles along the way that we have to smooth out and hopefully learn from. But I think that this is a time of great opportunity and also great opportunity for more compassion, more empathy, more understanding to be made if we choose to make those choices. And so I think it will be interesting to see as things develop and change how Thailand chooses to make those choices and how people within Thailand choose to make those choices. And I think that that's the thing that I noticed as most interesting about living in Thailand for 2 years. It's like there are a lot of things that I was like, you got the water, the smoke, the the what the bang. I'm like, those are all things that I was like, the sky is falling on. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that's also there is I've thought about it and like, would I have changed my time? Would I have been there shorter? And the truth is, in some respects, I probably would have been there shorter if I'd known it would have saved me from the nocturnal asthma attacks or from the 3 blood infections. Like, I probably would have been a somewhat rational adult, have decided not to be there if I knew that that's why I was sick. But I also think that there's a lot of things that we learn along the way, and I think that Thailand has taught me a lot. It's taught me a lot about how the language barriers are not really that big of a deal in most cases. Now I will say, like with the medical thing, that's kind of a big deal. But I'm like, in most cases, communication isn't really even about words so much as body language and being polite, which is funny since I make my living as an English tutor online. But I'm like, when it comes down to it, it's all about how we relate with other people, which may not actually be about the words we use so much as the spirit in which we approach things. And I think that the beautiful kindness that I found with my Thai friends and my Thai acquaintances and the people I met along the way, the motorbike rides through the forest and the jungles and the rubber trees, the riding on the back of a motorbike through the streets of Phuket vicariously and going, I really should have bought a bike helmet. Those are things that I'll remember and tell my kids about when I have them. And we'll talk about adventures. And someday I might take them to Bangkok and we'll ride through the streets together. But those are things that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to have if I hadn't have gone to Thailand. And I'm really glad I had those opportunities in the midst of all the reasons why I won't probably live there permanently. I mean, if there's one thing life has taught me in the last few years, like before the pandemic and during the pandemic, it's like it's really not good to say I'll never do something because there's a possibility that life changes, that things change, and that you change your opinion, or that fate and destiny, a horse, as they say in Tango, changes that opinion for you. So I think that there's always caveats. There's always wild cards that might shift things. But I'm sorry for this podcast running long in its ramble, but I thought maybe these would be things that would help other people as they consider their time in Thailand or moving to Thailand. Thank you. Check it at the round table. Bye.